the question that she has asked was if the government is both incapable or and unwilling. So what can we do? And secondly, what can we do also regionally? I'll just try to clarify that question a little bit first, just to begin the discussion, and then we can discuss. See, I'm very familiar with this thing about unwilling and incapable, because there are
Unable.
unable and uh, uh, you know this this has happened. It's a situation in number of uh, countries that are known to us, like Asia, in Asia. But I think we should really clarify that those two terms. I don't think there is anything called absolutely unable and absolutely unwilling. That's the very nature of politics and governance, that no government can claim that it is totally unable to deliver justice, and on the other hand that it is completely unwilling. Of course, it will never say that it is unwilling, but when the people would say that it is they are really not willing. See, it's a matter of where the weight is. That is, certain countries there is a willingness to a certain degree, and so there we have bigger space. When there's a willingness on the part of the government to incorporate our views and work with others, then we have a bigger space. When the government is not so willing, then we have a smaller space. And a smaller space can be a little small or more, depending on the level of repression. Is not just a question of they are subjectively willing or unwilling. It is how far they will try to go to repress if you do something. So I think we should try to understand that in that way, because our starting point is that all governments are unwilling to give a lot of space to human rights. But they do. Why? Some countries they do. Why? Because people have developed to a certain extent that without giving in to people to a certain degree, the governments cannot survive. So the real standpoint is whether people can influence government and whether they have the capacity to do that, or whether they are improving their capacity to do that. If and of course, if there is a kind of an absolute prohibition like the Suharto's time, then the space is very limited for the people. But with the changes, although they are very insufficient, there is a little more space in place like Indonesia than what they had in the past. So the question is how far this space is made use of by the people in order to assert themselves, and do the people know what they want. And that is very, very important. Do the people know what they want? Of course, the people will generally say, yes, we want justice. Yes, we want human rights. Now, those are correct in broader terms. But practically, could they say, in order to do that, we need this improvement, this particular improvement in this particular institution? Like that, can they detail out and say, this is what we want? And if there is a group of people, this will always begin with the smaller groups. If a group of people are very clear, this is what we want, not in the abstract terms, but in practical terms, this is what we want, then gradually it is possible to convince more people about that, and then bring about a pressure that the government will have to listen to you. So if you once again go back to the Suharto's time, gradually people made it very clear that they don't want Suharto. He has to go. And also they don't like militarization. They want a civilian government. So that much that much clarity was there. So but beyond that, now what do they really want, and how do you decide what you want? That is, you have to identify what are the things that prevent you from getting what you want. If you detailed out that, say for example, if your quality of your judges are poor, however much you try to get justice, you will not get justice, because justice required certain higher quality of judiciary. People who, higher quality means this, people who can understand that freedom and the liberty is what they are supposed to defend. They are not supposed to be defending the government or the military, because judiciary is a completely different thing. But when you have a long period like Suharto's, these ideas go away. These ideas disappear. So people who are later comes as judges, they will not have those ideas in their head. So there has to be people who understand that problem. And people try to push the idea, we need a better set of judges. We need a better set of better investigative system. Like that, it is up to you to say, first most difficult part is identifying what you want, and in order to get that, what you need practically to demand. If that grows among the a certain section of people, then gradually larger space will be created in spite of lots of opposition. There will be a lot of civilian opposition, for example, like the radical Muslim opinions. All these things are, the contest that is going on within the civil society itself. It happens everywhere. That the difference is that if there is a growing understanding, okay, despite of these differences, we need to allow certain space for things to happen. So if the civil society grows like that, it can make the government unwillingness less. More civil society strong, and then yes, less. Yes, please. You were trying to say something.
You were saying unless what? Unless you haven't completed your sentences. You were saying
unless what, Mr. Basil?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned about unless blah 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 something. When we have a bigger space for the civil society, but on the other hand, we also have opposition group who against the, you know.
That will happen in every society. In your society, it may be more militant.
Okay.
You know,
Alright.
civil society is not one unit.
Mm-hmm.
Civil society will have people with many different ideas.
Mm.
And then your strength will lie in getting more people thinking that changes that you want are better for the country than the other people.
Okay. All right, Mr. Basil, I think I got your point. It's very well explained, but let me answer with my reading on human rights cases. Okay.
Yeah.
First is a state crime conducted toward civilian, like the one we have been through. You know, we have tried to solve the 65, 66 cases for 50 years now, and we haven't been able to like force the government to see what the problem is and how many people were still persecuted, and those people actually been used as political weapons to stigmatize everyone who were against the the government, and there is there is a what you call it, Chris, ucapan. There is an not everybody, but everyone who will against the government will be PKI-kan. Akan di
Oh, the everybody who promote, who advocate the 65 case will be let's say like blame as a part of the Indonesian Communist Party.
Yeah, and even though there is nothing to do with 65, if you were against the government policy, and you will be blamed as, you know, a movement of the left movement of the PKI movement, and you'll be easily be caught and put in jail. And this is what is happening in Indonesia. So the stigmatization is one problem that we are still have to face it. It's very difficult because the government is very strong and the military regime is still there. So let me back again to my reading on human rights cases. Now, I believe there is a state crime conducted towards civilian. And the second one is the state crime conducted toward another nation group, like political community in Indonesia. It's very easy to persecute because the government will see them as against the government. So they will be banned. They will be persecuted because they were blamed as part of the left movement who is against the government. So it means the criticism in Indonesia is very difficult to convey to the government. Now, I have some cases that I learned from the history. Like this is to do with your position as the Asian Human Rights Commission. There's so many human rights movement or the victims of the state crime conducted toward another nation group. For instance, like how do you see the Ianfu cases when the Japanese oppress or taking all women from other nations to be the sexual slave? and that is up to now is not yet solved. And the second one is annexation of Dalai Lama from China. He forced to leave and take asylum in India and stay in Dharamsala. And also another suku, another ethnic group in China,
Uyghur.
Uyghur, they were also through apa namanya through persecution, and also I think you learn also about the genocide in Armenia, right, by the Turks. So I believe these cases, the whole cases of human rights in Asia, is actually makes me think that we need solidarity. Now, your institution, it should be one that we are all the Asian leaders should get together. You should invite them and find a way how to, to work out in this concept of solidarity in the human rights field. Yeah. If your example like Korean, which their civilian actually they have a very strong civilians because their economy much better off than us. Okay, so you can see the Korean people is much more self-sufficient, and they're easily they know what they will fight for. Their economy is already established. Now here, you cannot expect Indonesia would be like the Korean. Their surveillance is very strong.
Oh, South Korea, yeah.
Korea, yeah. We
Yeah.
are not yet like that. We're not. I don't think that we have our the level of our economy standard is not yet like the Korean, the Korea. Because I agree totally with you that the human rights cases is very much connected to the achievement of the standard of economy of their life, for sure. Yes. So my point is, I really need to see your wisdom on how the institution that you've been there for 40 years see all these cases, human rights cases in Asia, and also we need to see, probably this is the best time to look out that the whole world is now, the whole civilian is doing a human rights movement everywhere in the world. So I think this is a very, very good momentum as the Asian Human Rights Commission. I believe that let's try to build this solidarity. How are you going to do it? I mean, the Asian leaders should be able to get together and look at the Rohingya. I was really shocked that this was done by Aung San Suu Kyi, the Myanmar government, because they were expelled out from their country and they were stateless. So what can we do? I mean, this is just my reading on human rights cases. Mr. Basil.
Yeah. Very good that you put these questions. The first, and what we have to, we have been working over 30 years on these things, and we have a certain conclusions we have arrived. First is, there are certain questions that purely Asian or international solidarity cannot solve. They can support, but they cannot solve problems. Problem solving begins at home, however difficult it may be. In each country, with all the different countries have different levels of difficulties. And the depending on that, the initiatives that people develop can be supported from outside. But outside solidarity cannot solve the local problems. And this is a big illusion that was developed because people started going to the UN, and then they will make a statement during the, and we also have done that. You know, every session we make statements, and we will go and meet diplomats and all kinds of things, and we expect that things will improve. See, the international community means, in the real term, governments, and the governments, way they act is for real political reasons. And human rights, while they say that they will care for about human rights and all these things, it is not their first priority. These are real issues. See, we have to face that. If you may go to the most say we people used to go to the American embassy and and say, you know, now you intervene. But today you see in the American street that they cannot, even the American people are not heard. American people themselves are not being heard. And there's huge crisis, worse than, you know, other countries when it comes to COVID, because they don't even have a proper health care. So this idea that, you know, mere solidarity can solve problems, external solidarity, is, I think, one of the illusions that we had for a long time. It also works in another time. For example, if there was Cold War, if, for example, the Americans and the Russians were really at the Cold War, they want to keep, doing something on human rights in other countries in order to have their strength. But when the end of Cold War, all our countries, like as you say, Indonesia, all the poorer countries lost. Now they have no reason to be very, very bothered about what happened to us. So these are real issues. You know, we can't just say, no, we don't like it, but therefore it is like that. But these are facts. People who have worked very closely know that the world way of looking at human rights in the developed countries have changed. And they find no reason except, of course, there are human rights people, not the governments. There are people. People care for other people's rights. But as far as the governments are concerned, they are preoccupied and they are more interested in other issues. So therefore, the first initiatives have to come from locally. Now, you said that the Korea is now rich and therefore we cannot use this thing. I have been to Korea many times and I have talked to many people. Korea was one of the poorest places. When Japanese left Korea, you know, people, and when we are sitting at the table, people have said, we never had a meal like this. Even at the food level, you know, they had more problems than some of the other Asian countries. They were a very poor country. But because of various things, and mainly because they were able to, during difficult times, build a very strong solidarity movements inside. They were able to not only overthrow military, but they were able to bring about a democratic government, genuinely democratic government. Now, what happens in countries like Indonesia, Cambodia, even Philippines, was that they say Philippines, they overthrew a dictator, the Marcos, but they did not build democracy. Only there was some relief, you know, that unlike those days, people were not arrested. people have a little bit more space. That was how it was under the Aquino government. But now everything has come back worse. Today's situation is worse than that of the Marcos situation, where people can be just shot for doing, say, like your type of work. If you are in Philippines, you are very likely you get shot. And it happened to many people, including priests who are involved with environmental work. So what has happened is our movements were only trying to overthrow dictators. We were not conscious that that is not enough. That you must build democracy consciously. And the Koreans, when they were poor, they realized that. And they worked on that. And they worked on that. And finally they succeeded. It did not come from heaven. Their economic development has not come from heaven. They were very, if you know the people, I know many of them, who virtually, lost all their, they spent in jails. They had to stay in exile. They had to do all kinds of things and lost their careers, life, families, in order to insist that not only to overthrow military, but to have democracy. Now, in our problem with many other countries is we have spontaneous movements to, after a lot of suffering, there will always be some movements, and the movements can overthrow the dictator. But nobody, if you ask anybody, what have you been doing to improve your democratic institutions? How many NGO activists can answer that? If you ask somebody, what have you been doing in order to improve your democracy? For example, in order to improve that, you can have a fair hearing. In order to have, deal with the deficit created by Suharto. Suharto destroyed the whole infrastructure. So I know that some of the American organizations raised these issues long time ago, like the Asia Watch. They said without a civilian police, you will never have a fair trial. You can't have military police doing criminal investigations and expect a criminal trial. The same, poor quality judges cannot deliver high quality justice. These are internal problems. Nobody can come from outside and solve that problem. You can't make your judges better judges by solidarity. However much solidarity we have, we cannot make the, somebody who doesn't care for, the people and who doesn't have the understanding of the law and who accepts the, things as it is. So these are another side. Once things like that happen, what happened in the Indonesia is a terrible level of destruction. Same way, like in Cambodia, in a smaller way, in numbers smaller way, but in practically is worse way, because they destroyed all the intelligentsia, not just one. You can't. I was there for 2.5 years. During that time, after the, in the early 90s, when they were trying to rebuild, we couldn't find anybody that we can have a discussion like this. Their level of, the understanding was so low that they couldn't even participate in a discussion. And, I have written these things in at length. I can share with you. It was a terrifying thing. So there is an internal work to be done. What organization like us can do is to help in that internal work together, and not just to cry out, have solidarity just to cry out. That's not going to, bring about a kind of people who will look after your democracy and who will your own capacity, improvement of your own capacities to demand democracy, demand the rule of law, That requires a group of people who think of these things, get qualified. Now, suppose there are people who are willing to do that. We can find ways to provide trainings, get qualified people to train them, things like that, so that they will begin to understand there is much more involved than just solidarity in the sense of making a lot of noise everywhere. But there is a certain limitation in our human rights education in the past. We taught people that they have rights, and we taught them the UN conventions. We also taught them that the past crimes has to be prosecuted, but we didn't tell them where can you prosecute them. For example, today, you just ask not about 1965. Today, if a person gets beaten up and tortured, today, now what, and they come to you, as a human rights activist, they come to you. What will you advise? What will you say? If you do this, you can get your right. Where will you tell them? You go to such and such a place, you make the complaint, and then it will be investigated and all that. Can you say that? So if there is no solution to problems of now, you cannot expect 3 million cases of missing people. That problem government is going to give priority to solve. Now, these are the kind of things that, unfortunately, this human rights movement itself got involved because some of the Western countries, which we trained our activists, just tell them, this happened also in Cambodia. They just come and tell them, okay, ask for prosecution to past crimes. If you ask them, how about today's crimes? Today somebody get murdered, just ordinary crime, murdered. What is the likelihood that the proper investigation will be conducted, proper level of prosecution will be carried out? See, you can't still even solve a problem like the killing of your friend. What is his name? The one who was killed in the plane.
It's very true. We haven't solved the problem yet.
Yeah. So over such a long period of struggle for that single case, which happened in front of everybody, now system is unable to deliver. So you need a kind of education among the human rights activists, not to be just to crying out slogans, but practically to say, what is wrong with my country? What are the things? Without institutions, you cannot get justice. That is why in the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, there's a thing called goal number 16. First time they have put the goal number 16. Goal number 16 means developing the institutions which make justice possible. Without those institutions, justice will never be possible, however much solidarity you may build outside. So the solidarity we can help to build is to point out, in Indonesia, this is the nature of policing system. This is the nature of the prosecution system. This is the nature of the justice system. And this is how they should be improved. If you people agree, we can give a lot of publicity, a lot of these things to these things and create international opinion. Then the international people will pick up these things. They will pick up, okay, police need the reform. The judges need a far better education. So these are issues that they can pick up. They can put money into that. They can, within a certain period, they can improve them. But we must know what the solidarity is for. If you say on this specific thing, there should be solidarity. and very practical thing, then we can build solidarity. But if you say just say 1965 massacre, justice for all, have solidarity, it means nothing. Practically, it means nothing. So you must solidarity can be built only in cooperation. If you are trying to do something and you tell us for doing this we need this kind of support from you, then we can do all what we can, and we can in order to get the support for you. But you have to decide, and for that you have to get down from these broader demands. From broad, that will be all there. I mean that will never go away. That will be there, but from broader demand into very specific demands. But if something happens to you tomorrow, what is the possibility of getting justice? Now you say that if you do any work, they prosecute you. So first that problem should be solved, no? Before you solve the 1965 problem. How can we say that 1965 problem will be solved under those circumstances? So the protection for the people, protection for the activists, protection for people to have more space within their country. Now, if you work on these things, other things will come, other things will follow. So you need to have clarity in your, among yourself by discussion to get a clarity. What is wrong with our justice system?
Thank you, Mr. Basil. I want to treat you more with the case of 65.
Case of
65.
65, yeah.
Yeah. I believe you've heard about the movement that we did in 2016, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. We brought this issue to international community. We using the International People's Tribunal in The Hague. You heard about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We have the final report of the court by Mr. Jacob Chuck. Yeah. And we handed over to the government and also to the National Human Rights Commission of Indonesia, Komnas HAM. Yeah. But the government paid a very small response. That they were, like you said, they were willing to facilitate a symposium on 65, okay, and invited numbers of victims and appointed many speakers from the academy, academician, journalists, and the Human Rights Watch in Indonesia, expert on 65. We conducted the symposium. It's 2 days. But I have to let you know, the following day, the government also supported another gathering, not the format of symposium, but another gathering that also against what we did for 65. Okay? So it shows that the government is actually not wanting to take a side, not wanting to facilitate the way to solving the problem of the 65. They also care, they also give space to the people that against us, against the people who wants to solve the 65 case, to talk about the violation of human rights in the past. So especially 65. So we left to nowhere. I mean, we cannot do we cannot do anything, to put it that way. But still, we have this community of the victims like YPKP, Pak Bejo, and Forum 65, and also many friends that support us like Kontras and Asam, and also Komnas Perempuan. So we've been doing this like over and over again, and we try to keep our spirit to urge the government to get involved and solve the problem at 65 because we think it's important. But this is it. We come to use the term that the Indonesian government is unwilling to solve the problem, and I don't really agree totally with the term unable because actually every government able to solve the problem, but they are not want to do that and they unable. Why we use this term unable? Because the government is very much involved with the military power, yeah, and
Yeah, but
and
there.
there are also the power of the party. Now this is another case that we see the bigger pictures of why the human rights Indonesia is susah untuk dibangun kedaulatannya,
It's,
Chris.
it's it's difficult to develop the sovereignty of human rights
in Indonesia.
Yeah. See, first of all, technically speaking, word unable is not used in that way. Unable means if, say, for example, a government is so poor that it is unable to, conduct an inquiry. Say, there are some countries, this political inability is a completely different matter. When the government is not politically capable because of political pressures of conflicting political pressures, that is not the way technically the word unable is used. Unable, the technically, so why the government is unable is very well shown from the way you use the word unable by, first of all, after that international conference, have a symposium. They allow you a symposium. Then the other side goes and say, why do you support them? We did this for you. So we also want something. So they will also allow them also want. And that is how those are not inability, those are the unresolved political problems of a country.
Yeah.
Those are things that you have to work out slowly, and even a government can't solve these problems overnight. Say, for example, Aung San Suu Kyi took power as a democratic leader, but she can't exercise even 5% of that power. 95% of that power is still exercised by the military.
Yeah.
So these are realities, political realities of a country. When, see, if they have killed 3 million people, this is going to have an impact for a very long time. They have the governments which happen, these things will also be under pressure by the people who did it. Otherwise, they cannot survive, and you may have even a direct military takeover as a result. So these are political questions. These are not inability and unwillingness means lack of capacity. But here there are political problems associated. So those political problems, any government has to play with that. Otherwise, say for example, see what happened in Thailand. In Thailand, by 1997, there was a turn towards democracy. And there was a very good constitution made. And the middle class, Thailand has a very good middle class, developed middle class. They wanted better conditions for democracy. And then there was a leader who came up, who had also a lot of money. And he developed a party which will go against the king and the military. What happened? Military overthrew that government and took over completely again. So now you have a military dictatorship again. See, these are political questions. The political question you just, because even a government don't take risks by, siding one side if they are not strong enough to be able to suppress the other side. So that is not, so those are things that you will have to live with for quite some time. And not only your country, is all around like that. If you go to Cambodia, 1 million people out of 8 million people died, killed. But up to now, there is nothing except, some old fellows who are already dying. They were brought to some sham tribunal. But the people who are really behind are governing the country. Hun Sen and them, they are governing the country. And it's a military, surface. On the face, democracy, but at the bottom is a military government. So these are political realities. Those are things which can change only if there is a strong people's movements, and then you must find ways, to work with also some part of the opponents, and see, to work it out in a way that it will be better for the benefit of everybody, that we have some changes. Those are things that not international community can't solve that.
Agree, I agree. But let me bring back the idea of my reading on solidarity in Asia. I follow your explanation. I agree totally with you, but I have another vision on that not concept, but I don't like to hear that humanize read as a slogan. No. My perspective on human rights in Asia is not only like your participation to interfere with the other nation. No, but if we can see how we work on Asia solidarity on human rights, this is for the future. So in terms of economy, we build that solidarity together, so it become like a social control of the Asian countries all over Asia. So it means that if we can get all Asian leaders get together and have a good spirit on solidarity, they will be able to lead their nation and to reduce the violation, the state violation to the civilian. So it's like if one country with another is dependent, interdependent in each other, then solidarity, we can build solidarity. Now, if we build solidarity in terms of economy, we can also build solidarity in terms of human rights. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, because when you say let's bring the leaders together, what do you mean? Which leaders? Political leaders? Leaders of governments?
I mean,
These
president,
are
the
these are
president,
huh?
the president, the president.
President. So that is where all these governments what you have are governments which are most of them dictatorships. We just can't have only a sentimentally saying let us get together. You think China is going to get together on anything to do with human rights? It's a different system that is built against human rights. Asia, it is very different to European countries where for 200-300 years they are all agreed that the basic framework is democracy. So on many things they could come together and have a common view. But in Asia, each country you get take one by one. In Thailand, you get a military government, and the president will be the military chief. In Cambodia, you get a man who is completely, opposed to any kind of human rights, Hun Sen, and who is presiding over the military. In the Philippines, you get Duterte, who is openly telling anybody is opposing him to kill them, and he is doing that. And in Pakistan, you get again a military government and civil war situation, where the least important thing is anything to do with democracy or human rights. You get Bangladesh today; it is much more restricted than your country. Anybody who even have a tweet can go to jail. There is a rapid action battalion with the power to arrest, kill, and make people disappear, and there won't be any accountability. You get even a country which was one time, more democracy, like Sri Lanka is my country, which is today under a military leader who is elected, but he is a military leader. Then only country that is halfway somewhere democratic is only India. But India also, there is huge amount of repression of the civil society activists and all this. Now you get ask the same leaders to come and say, let's have democracy for the whole of Asia. I mean, that is, then we are not, we are living in a kind of unable to realize what these countries are. So that is why at this moment only solidarity that can come is the solidarity from the bottom, not the solidarity from the top. So that will depend on what each country. Now it was possible to have solidarity for the South Korea during the time of military dictatorship, because the people's movement was very clear on what they wanted. They asked the people, we want this particular government to go, and we want a democratic governments to be installed, and please help us. And of course, the Asian governments did not help them. But at least the European and United States finally, which earlier supported the military, realized that they cannot any longer support it, and they turned the other way, and they supported them, because inside the people had a very clear idea of what they wanted.
Okay, if we keep having this problem in our thoughts, okay, I mean, this is all the pictures you gave me. It's very real. It's in a reality in Asia. But what would Asia become in the future, when we all know this is already happening, and we still have violation of human rights in the past which not yet been solved. What would we do? What would Asian Human Rights Commission that supposedly be like an anchor in Asia, in Asian, I mean, should be giving an inspiration towards what Asian would like to be in the future. I
See,
mean, humanity problem is everywhere in Asia. Poverty, violation, everything. So,
see
what
the
else can,
see
how can we start to build up, you know,
see.
the
But
region?
it is one thing to talk about Asia in future, and we don't know which future and how long afterwards, right?
Why?
Yeah,
Why you don't know?
well, yeah, because simply because it can be each country. It can, you know, we can all go. Present direction is that we can be very much more, you know, complete loss of democracy in Asia is possible. And that is, if you go back 20 years and now, 20 years ago, there were few countries which are military. Today, almost every country is, you know, getting rid of parliaments, getting rid of, you know, subduing the judiciary. So, you know, the Asian Human Rights Commission is not a dream. We talk of practical realities. And practical realities is how to build among the people a consensus, how to fight within their own countries for their improvement of their systems. If there is a judicial independence in Asia, in every country, that will be a good Asia. If there is a good systems of administration of justice, that will be a good Asia. And that will be good not only for individuals, but also for economies. But we don't want to, you know, to give this kind of, you know, broad idea of, you know, kind of a dream, how nice it would be if you all, you know, have a different kind of Asia. Because then, of course, we have to think about another, not now, when all these governments and all these leaders are gone away, someday it may happen like that. But just now, reality is that in Asia, there is more forces against democracy and human rights than ever before. And every country is faced with this now. So what we can do is, as a regional organization, to help those who in their own country are fighting in order to improve things, and who know their own mind, who says, well, in my country, this is what I want. If each country doesn't become a democracy, Asia cannot become a democracy. It is not, you know, as if one day Asia will become democracy and then others, the bad countries will also become democracy. It's not that way. It is each country becoming, improving themselves. Through that, the Asia, there's an Asian consensus. Consensus must come from each country under the difficult circumstances. But you know, because people will just, if you just go and tell anybody who knows about these governments, ordinary people who guys say that we are going to ask your government to participate in a conference to declare the whole Asia to be a democracy, people will just laugh at us. Don't you know what is happening? So I think, you know, we should get down from more broader discussions into nitty-gritty, detailed discussions about what is wrong in each country. And that's the Asian Human Rights Commission's approach. We are helping, we are fighting in our own countries. We are helping others to come to a better understanding of what is really wrong now. By improving now, you go back also for the past crimes. If you cannot improve now, you will not get anything on past crimes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basil. I think
Yeah, thank you very much for the conversation, because I think sometimes we must talk bluntly. I could have also agreed with you and just say, like this, let's
I
call
know, but
but
you're
So,
ourselves.
Mr. Basil,
Yeah.
just one point. I think how if the changes never happen? For instance, like we have a dream to have a better judiciary system, but the judiciary system is never been reformed because the military, the regime is still occupying the system. So does it mean that we cannot bring the cases to the judiciary system which is still occupied by the regime, or we should remove the regime first, or we should
No. See,
what should we do?
we should bring the cases to imperfect courts, right?
Mhm.
They are imperfect, but we should bring them. But we should use that in order to expose the system.
Oh, so using the case to change the system, yeah?
That's right. In
Ah.
every lesson you learn from that system should be talked to the people. We went for that. Now in Sri Lanka, we are doing that for a long time. We go
Mm.
for cases, and then we know that most of the time it will fail, and there are many things will happen, and then we tell the people, this is how your system is like, and then the people will
Oh.
say, yeah, what you experience in that case is what I experience in my case.
Oh, so actually, Sister Dolorosa, we should continue the advocacy. I mean, to advocate the case, and we use the case to exercise to put pressure on the system.
Yeah.
We should put a lot of cases, put a lot of campaign, solidarity among the local people, etc. So we can expose the problem actually like that, yeah, Mr. Basil.
okay.
Yeah.
Now let me give you another insight of what is happening in related to what Chris just said to you, his question. Now, what is happening in us in our judiciary system is we have no common logic. Okay, it's very difficult because the government is not only a president or the military, but also party power,
Yeah, political party. Yeah.
political party power. So there is no common logic can be implemented and to show the people that this system is wrong. They have their own. They have their own logic to be what is to be implemented according to them. Yeah. How can you? How can you? How 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 would you respond to this kind of situation? It's in reality in Indonesia.
Yeah. See, so when you go to the case, and in the case, they are trying to use their logic to suppress your case. And
For
then
their
you,
for their apa namanya keuntungan, for their benefit.
Yeah, the benefit for the
Yeah.
interest.
yeah,
For their interest.
they will. So, one more you know the details, you begin to expose it either by yourself, or if it is dangerous, from outside. You begin to talk, we go to a case, and this is why it is justified. But then this is how justice is prevented.
Okay.
Justice is being politically prevented. And you begin to expose that. And the many will see, because even those people who are in these parties will begin to see more and more that if there's a problem for them, they have been the same position. See, democracy, struggle in the democracy is pressure against pressure. It is not one way. But we have our way, and all the rest should listen to us. It's not like that. There are opposite views, opposite pressures. But who has a greater pressure will be the one who will begin to influence more. So if you are very weak at the moment from the on pressurizing, then you have to go for improving that and convincing people that this is not for the sake of any politics. We are not doing it for politics. In order to improve the life for everybody, including our opponents.
Do you, Mr. Basil, have you any connection to Indonesian Human Rights Watch? You talk to them. Do you know them?
No. In recently, I don't have. Actually, we can in the future with Chris. We can try to talk to them.
So, Chris dia nggak kenal sama si Andreas ya?
Andreas Harsono, no. Mr. Basil doesn't know him.
Okay.
Yeah, next time we can have a Zoom meeting with Mr. Andreas as well.
Yeah. Invite me also.
Yeah. So I think now, Mr. Basil, maybe we are facing the shrinking space, space of civil society almost in Asian countries,
Yes. Yeah, I believe that. So this is why I see you very highly, your institution, and it's just your institution inspired me to have a big dream on Asia.
Do we still have hope, Mr. Basil?
Yeah. Because people are suffering. People want change, but it will come in a painful way. Always changes come in a painful way.
Because Asia is very unique, if we compare to Africa, for instance, they don't have like China or even North Korea. North Korea, South America, I think their history is a bit better to some extent, But if we talk about Asia, it's very, very complicated. We have countries like Vietnam, North Korea, China, Afghanistan, etc., who are still, dealing with the very basic principle of democracy. So I think Asia is still need a long way to go, Mr. Basil.
Yeah, but I think it's both ways. You see, Asia compared to Africa is the people. There is much greater number of people who are better educated. There is a So for Africa, of course, the big problem will be how to come from the very beginning. From utterly, tribal societies to a modern society. So Asia has its problems, but at the same time, we have a more developed people, educated institutions. So there is a far greater possibilities in the future. Africa will always, for a long time, will depend on, the Western aid.
Even though Africa has African Union, which is a regional system, but it's not really help, Mr. Basil, in terms of human rights.
It's a regional system by name. Whenever there is a conflict, they just go against their union. But because they get lot of assistance from Europe, they are subject to more pressure. So if the government is getting a lot of money from, say, if each of our governments are getting a lot of money from some European countries, they will listen more.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to lose that money, not because they like human rights.
Yeah. So they still need to improve the human rights standard in the regional area. This is actually the same, Sister Dolorosa. We also have the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, which is sub-regional body in Southeast Asia. Even they have annual meeting, monthly meeting as well. But I don't see any significant contribution from the ICHR, the ASEAN Intergovernmental.
See, they exist by agreeing not to insist too much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that commission would have disappeared. The Bangkok, this thing.
My last question, Mr. Basil. we've been postponing to continue our movement to seek judicial judicial court. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still continue on 55. Would you be able to help us find an available rapporteur to accommodate us to have a slot in High Commission of Human Rights Commission in UN in Geneva? There is a requirement that there should be a reporter invited by the state. This is our problem, because the state will not do that. But we cannot endorse our case unless it was supported by a rapporteur that is invited by the state.
No, there is a, you can always.
Do you know anything about this mechanism?
Huh?
Do you know anything about this rapporteur mechanism?
Oh, special rapporteur, Mr. Basil.
See, special rapporteurs mechanism is that anybody at any time can approach them with reports and things like that.
Submission, etc.
Yeah. And every year they make a report to the UN Human Rights Commission. And if you have made a good case about your country, any issue, they will mention that in their report. Whether the rapporteur will want to ask the government that they want to visit you will depend on if the rapporteur is convinced that in coming there, it will be useful. It is up to the government to allow or not to allow, but very often they allow for the sake of international good faith.
Okay.
Say if they don't allow, it goes badly for them. So Indonesia in particular is very careful to have a good image internationally.
Yes.
So they may allow if the rapporteurs ask. But if you want to go to Human Rights Commission, the UN Human Rights Commission Council sessions, I mean, it's not really worth going because you will get only 3 minutes to speak. The best way is to write reports and send to the rapporteurs. But if you really want to go, then we have the COSOC status. We can facilitate somebody going there, but it is really a waste of money and waste of time.
Yeah, actually, Sister Dolo, the ASEAN Human Rights Commission has long experience working on the UN advocacy. We also regularly submit written submission, report, and also intervention, yeah, Mr. Basil, in the UN system in Geneva. So, Mr. Basil, next in the next submission, either written submission or maybe the oral statement, I will work closely with local activists here in Indonesia to get more cases to raise in the advocacy UN.
Especially on genocide.
Yeah, especially the genocide, the past abuses, the impunity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basil. I hope to see you one day when the COVID is over. Please come to my. I have a Beranda Rakyat Garuda where I have always a meeting of activists that you can meet them all. Also, Chris.
Yes,
Okay.
Sister. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basil.
Okay.
Bye-bye.